G'day everyone, welcome to Lubrication Explained. In the comment section, I sometimes get questions about specific products or specific applications. I have X engine, what should I use? And I can't really comment on those because I don't know everything about the application. And I don't know everything about the product either. So it's impossible to know what's in a lot of these formulations. What I can do is arm you with some of the tools where using publicly available information, we can find out as much about the product as possible. So what I would like to do here is do a bit of a case study where we look at a specific product. I'm going to choose Pennzoil Ultra Platinum 5W30 just because I know nothing about it. And from the publicly available information, see if we can cut through some of that marketing jargon to identify some of the underlying features of the product. So let's get into it. All right, the first thing that we're going to do is go to Google. You can go to DuckDuckGo or Bing or whatever. Just go to a search engine and type in Pennzoil Ultra Platinum 5W30. It's going to take you to the Pennzoil website. All right, so once we go there, we can start to get a little bit more information about this. So up on the right here, it says it's made with 100% synthetic molecules. So this particular product range, remember we're talking about all the viscosity grades at the moment, is made as a full synthetic. Now, if you recall from a previous video, the definition of synthetic has changed a little bit. Basically what it's saying here is group 3 and up. So group 3 plus, group 4 PAOs, or other synthetics like alkylated naphthalenes and esters, they have picked from those buckets. So effectively what they're saying is there is no group 1, group 2, or naphthenic base oils in this. Then it identifies, cleaner pistons, better fuel economy, protects horsepower, unsurpassed wear protection, and excellent performance in extreme temperatures. We'll unpack that a little bit because surprisingly in the lubricants market, marketing claims that you make, especially on documents like this, are quite highly regulated. And very much with the bigger players, your Castrol, Shell, Mobil, your Amsoils, your Pennzoils, etc., they are quite highly regulated, and these kind of claims can be contested in court. So they really need to have some kind of evidence to back it up. As we go down the line, Pennzoil is the official motor oil of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That's great, but it's not technical. That's just probably a sponsorship or a commercial agreement. And it's the same motor oil that's used by Scott McLaughlin. Apropos of nothing, Scott McLaughlin is actually a Kiwi. He's from New Zealand and used to race in the Australia and New Zealand V8 Supercar series. So we're quite familiar with him in this part of the world, and it's good to see him doing well in the IndyCar series. I think Pennzoil is actually going to be the sponsor of IndyCar going forward. So this product may end up actually being used in across all of the IndyCars going forward. Now, next up, Pennzoil is the first motor oil made from natural gas, not crude. This is a specific technology called Pure Plus, which is a trademark technology of Shell. So they have a GTL, which is gas to liquid process, where they take natural gas and convert it into higher C number liquids. It's not necessarily unique to Shell. There are a couple of other companies that do it. Sasol, for example, does it in South Africa, where they make diesel fuel out of a similar process. But Shell is certainly the one who kind of pioneered it and uses it the most extensively. They do actually sell it on the market. So GTL fluids will be in other products like, Mobil and Castrol. It's just that Shell probably uses it the most. Now, as we go down, we're going to get a comparison between the rest of the Pennzoil range. And if you remember from a previous video that we did on synthetics, you've got a whole cornucopia of different names for synthetic. So superior full synthetic, synthetic blend, advanced synthetic blend, entry-level full synthetic, synthetic blend, premium full synthetic. There's a whole different range. Basically, all of the engine oils that are on the market today say that they're synthetic, right? It's just a matter of whether it's full synthetic, like ultra full synthetic, or synthetic blend. So synthetic blends are more or less, probably group 2 technology with a splash of group 3. Most of the full synthetics are going to be mostly group 3 with a bit of PAO and ester and things like that. But as we go down, okay, so made from natural gas, that's the Pure Plus technology. Then carbon neutral. Now this is a really interesting one, right? Because clearly none of these lubricants are fossil fuel free or carbon free. So how can they declare that it's carbon neutral? It's all got to do with credits. Now, if this is something that is important to you, it's actually careful to look under the hood, because carbon credits are themselves a bit of a murky business, right? There's been all kinds of investigative journalism that's gone into some carbon neutrality schemes and uncovered the fact that, a forest in Southeast Asia will have been sold like 140 times over to different companies claiming carbon credits. So it's important if this is important to you, you need to look under the hood at what the carbon credit program is that they're using. Now, helpfully, Shell actually provides some information on their website. So if we go to the website, what you can actually see is if you kind of scroll down to the bottom, it gives you a bit of information on the program. But the key thing here, I think, is in the assurance statements that the processes have been independently reviewed by Lloyd's Register. Now, Lloyd's Register is it's basically an insurance house, but they're a very well-respected organization. And so I feel like if a company like Lloyd's Register is overseeing the carbon credit technology or the carbon credit program, then that gives you a little bit more assurance that the carbon offsets are real. So let's go back to this page. Okay, wear protection is a feature of all of them. I mean, yeah, that's what lubricants do. Fuel economy is an interesting one because there is a specific test that you have to pass in order to be able to claim that. Turbocharger protection is usually the anti-wear package. Cleanliness, probably the more kind of like premium versions of this product have a slightly more aggressive detergent dispersant package. Protection in extreme temperatures is going to go to the viscosity index, right? So products with higher VIs, so that's as you start to get into full synthetics, so group 3s and PAOs, have much higher VIs, which means that the viscosity is stable over a wider range of temperatures. Right, so that's kind of where they'll make that claim. Reduced oil consumption, it's probably got to do with the volatility. So some products have a lower volatility than others. Protects horsepower, that's an interesting claim. So how on earth are they saying it, quote unquote, protects horsepower? Shell actually have a helpful page on what they mean by this. So let's have a look at that. So the claim of protecting the horsepower of your engine is actually an engine cleanliness claim, which is really interesting. So it's not related to lubricity or reducing friction. It's actually related to cleaning, which is maybe not how you would initially think of it. So their idea is that if you can keep the engine clean and rob it of deposits, then there won't be as much grime that the engine will have to work against. I can kind of see the logic there. I think it's a little bit misleading because I would usually think of a horsepower advantage being, a lower traction coefficient or an energy efficient lubricant. But if you're going to go for cleanliness, I guess that kind of makes sense. Anyway. All right. So as we go down the list, then you've got some other stuff, extreme performance for European vehicles. And then another one conditions older seals. My guess is that either there are seal swell agents that are included in two of the formulations, or maybe it's esters, right, that helps kind of swell older seals a little bit. All right, so the next thing that I would do is go to the technical data sheet, because that's going to give us that next level of information down. So let's go over to that. All right, so this is the technical data sheet for specifically for the 5W30. Now, one thing that I'll kind of give as a top tip for this one, go to the manufacturer's website when you're trying to get the technical data sheet. So here, for example, I'm at shell-livedocs.com. Shell obviously manufactures the Pennzoil brand. The reason I say that is because this document, there are going to be versions of this document scattered all across the internet. Think, for example, that Shell and Pennzoil have hundreds, if not thousands, of distributors, retailers, and resellers all across the world. And they probably have versions of this document saved on their website too. So you want to go to the manufacturer's website to make sure that you have the most up-to-date version, right? So as an example, this specific product is API GF6 certified, API SP and ILSAC GF6 certified. There would have been a previous version, which was SN, and that would have had a different document. Right, so we want the most up-to-date one. As we go down, on the left, it's going to talk about the claims. So cleanest pistons, better fuel economy, protects horsepower. We already talked about that one. Unsurpassed wear protection, and excellent performance in extreme temperatures. Now we can start to look, because there are a whole bunch of subscripts, right, little asterisks, which tell you what that claim is based on. And like I said before, to prevent them from being challenged on a legal basis, they generally need to have some kind of proof of performance for these products. So cleanest pistons. That's a pretty aggressive claim, right? So Shell is making the claim that there is no other product which will perform better in the region of piston cleanliness than this specific grade. So what is that based on? Well, if you go subscript 1 down the bottom, it says based on sequence VH sludge test using SAE 5W20. Now note, we are evaluating a 5W30 and they've just said that the test is done with a 5W20. Now, am I concerned about that? Not really, because the detergent package is probably the same in both of those products, just different viscosity grades. The base oil package might be slightly different, and maybe there are slightly fewer VI improvers or something like that. I'm not overly concerned. So VI improvers will contribute to sludge and deposits. And if there are more VI improvers in the 5W30, then you could say it probably won't do quite as well on the cleanliness test, but you know, we're talking at the margins now. So what is the VH test? Well, the VH test is basically a simulated engine test where they run a 4.6 litre Ford engine, and they run it quite aggressively over 216 hours, I think. And yeah, it is. It says it right here. And they do cycles, right? At the end of the test, the parts in the engine are evaluated, and they're given a sort of a demerit rating based on the amount of varnish and sludge that's present. And as you can go down to the bottom right here, there are actually pass-fail criteria. Now, these specific pass-fail criteria are for SP and GF6 certification. So if you don't pass, you don't get the little API donut. However, there is kind of pass, and then there's getting an A+, right? So your score will determine how good the product is at resisting sludge and varnish. So evidently, Pennzoil has some kind of leaderboard, and they believe that they have the best score or the equal best score. Because if you go back to the language on the technical data sheet, it says nothing keeps your engines closer to factory clean. Not this does better than any other product, but nothing else does better than us. So there's a slight distinction there. So there might be other products that are equally as good. All right, now let's get into the next one, better fuel economy. So drive on average an extra 885 kilometers versus a dirty engine. So note that they're not making a claim to be the best in this specific performance metric. They're just saying better fuel economy. Now that's based on another industry standard test, which is actually dictated by the EPA. So it's a FTP 75 test cycle. They, again, simulate an engine run. It's kind of like you would have heard with EVs, the WLTP range, right? Very, very similar, where we simulate the amount of fuel burn, right? And that's how we make the determination. Finally, unsurpassed wear protection. So no other leading motor oil provides better protection from friction. So again, we go subscript 3 based on the sequence 4A wear test using, this time, the SAE 5W30, which is the product that we're evaluating. And if we go to what the test method is there, okay, that's got to do with simulating camshaft wear, cam lobe wear, I guess. And effectively, what you can see is that they run it, again, over a number of cycles, and they evaluate the sort of the depth of the wear scars that are produced on the cam lobes, and that gives you an indication of the performance. Again, there are sort of pass-fail criteria. Note that at the moment it's up to GF5 on this document, and it gives an average over all the different cam lobes. So once again, if we go back to the technical data sheet, no other leading motor oil provides better protection. So they are the best or equal best on that specific test. Now, one thing that I did notice in looking at the technical data sheets is, and this is where some of the claims can get a little bit confusing. Now, if we go over to the 0W20 technical data sheet, we can see some interesting differences, and this is where it kind of gets a little bit confusing. So let's go down. It says cleanest pistons, keeps pistons up to 65% cleaner than is required by the toughest industry standard, keeps your engine cleaner than any leading synthetic oil. Now that can be a little bit confusing because you might say, okay, why does the 0W20 claim 65% cleaner when the 5W30 doesn't? And this is where we start to get into distinctions about what version of the product are we up to. So if we go to the top here, the 0W20 technical data sheet is for API SN Plus and API SN, right? So remember the 5W30 that we looked at was SP certified. So again, right, cleanest pistons, subscript 1, and we go up to the top right here. This is based on the sequence IIIG, so it's 3G, piston deposit test using the SAE 5W30, right? So it's a completely different test that they're using to measure piston cleanliness versus the 5W30, which was, I think, using, which one was it? It was sequence VH, right? So it's kind of comparing apples and oranges. All right. Now, that's all we can kind of gather from this part of the documentation. Now we've kind of got to go outside of the Shell world to discover a little bit of information. And you're probably familiar with the forums like Bob is the Oil Guy or Oil Club. I think it's a Russian-based website. So if you want to start looking at, let's say, used oil analysis results, that's really where you're going to have to go. Now, a couple of disclaimers on this. For example, if we go to here is the Oil Club forum in Russia, right? Someone has done an oil analysis test on a new version of Pennzoil Ultra Platinum. Now, if you look down the list, okay, and we go to the wear metals. Now, I obviously can't read Russian, but I can recognize the different letters for, moly and phosphorus and zinc and all that kind of stuff. The one that kind of jumped out to me was calcium. So if you read across from calcium, it's got a value of 2792, and that's really high. So if you'll remember, we talked a little bit about LSPI in a previous video, and we said that calcium is, let's say, an indicator that LSPI will occur. And formulators have been trying to reduce the amount of calcium in their formulations since about sort of, let's say 5-6 years ago in response to LSPI. And here you see, oh, that's a really high number. And this is where you got to be a little bit careful with some of the forums, because if you go up to the date of the test, right, this was done, oh, hang on, I can't remember when it was done, but the post was done in April 2015. So that's almost 6 years ago. And so you've got to think, oh, maybe there's an updated formulation. And sure enough, when you go over to Bob is the Oil Guy, someone has posted a more recent oil test from 2019, where we can see that the calcium has now dropped to about 1,000, and the amount of magnesium has greatly come up. So that would suggest that the detergent dispersant package, well, the detergent package has switched from being a calcium-based one to a slightly more magnesium-based one in response to concerns about LSPI. So again, we can start to sort of get a little bit more information about the additive package through that. There's also a little bit of an increase in moly as well, and I think in boron. It seems like the amount of zinc and phosphorus has more or less stayed in line with the old additive pack. Now, one other thing, some of these additive packs can also vary by region. So if you want to try and find results from someone that has tested the product in your own country. All right, I know that was a little bit different and probably a little bit long-winded, but hopefully that can kind of give you a picture into how I would approach trying to find information out about a specific product. If you've got questions or comments, leave it below. Otherwise, this has been Lubrication Explained. Thanks.